we go. All right. Thank you so much for your patience with me. This, I guess you could say, is Jing energy in action. And so before I really get into my slide presentation, are you guys familiar with the concept of Jing?
Not as fully. I've heard of it, but I'm not real knowledgeable on it.
Right. And I'm, again, always learning. In some of my readings on traditional Chinese medicine, they have this thing called the three treasures, and Jing is one of them. And so, and it has to do, and the reason why I wanted to make sure today is the last day of my theme of anti-aging, and Jing has to do with the concept of longevity and aging well and aging gracefully. So I thought it would be appropriate to end this month with this topic. So I am going to share my screen. Show all windows. No, that isn't it. Where? Maybe it's a little further down. There it is. All right. Slideshow. Slideshow, here we go from beginning. There we go. I'm going to go here like this. So, because I'm old, and I want you to know I can't see your pictures right now. So if you feel free to speak up if you have a question.
Okay.
That's how I best work. So because I'm old and know this song, it won't mean a thing if you ain't got that Jing. Doo-wop, doo-wop, doo-wop. Okay. That's what I always think of it with this. And so Jing is the source of me vitality. And you're going to see, we talk a lot about the liver, and I realize it is liver season, but we just started liver season and we left kidney season. And my disclaimer, this presentation is strictly for information and education purposes only. It is not intended to serve as medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, but to share knowledge from the research and experience that I have had through my business, Feeding Your Health, and the experts who have taught me along the way. So I encourage you to do your own research and always consult with your qualified healthcare provider before altering or changing any aspect of your medical treatment, including but not limited to food, nutrient supplementation, or prescription medications. All right, so here's some traditional Chinese medicine terminology I wanted to go over before I got into the meat and potatoes of this all. So you are probably familiar with the concept of qi. It can be spelled Qi or Chi. And this is a measure for the vitality of a person, object, or state. And qi is actually a yang, yang. I say yang because when I say yang, it has that expansive quality that is a part of the yang principles. Yin or yin is passive, earth. It's related to the earth. It has to do with substance. It's what's inside, inside your body. It's the feminine quality. It tends, because it's internal, it tends to be more dark, not because, oh yay. Is she there yet? Welcome, Beatrice. We just started.
Ah, wonderful. I'm glad I made it back in time. Thank you, Lynn.
You betcha. So yin has to do with our internal, our emotions. And when we say dark, it doesn't mean bad or scary, because so much is learned in the dark. But that's the quality to it. It has to do with the space there. If you're cold, or an herb or something has a cold property, that's yin. So yin has to do with your blood, your body fluids, and your tissues. It has more to do with deficiency in chronic conditions. And as I said before, interior and deep imbalances. Again, an imbalance is not a bad thing. It's just something to be aware of. And then finally, yin has to do with contraction. Yang is, yang, it's active. It has to do with heaven. So yin is the earth, yang is heaven, and it has to do with function. Yin has to do with substance, the quality of something. Yang is, all right, how does it work? It's outside, it's the exterior, and it has to do with your mind, your brain. And it's, as I say these things, those of us who have males in our relationships might go, yep, this is all, what's going on? Let's get this done. Very masculine. It doesn't mean you have to be male to have that quality, but we might recognize it more in males. Whereas yin has to do with that quality of looking within. And personally, I feel it's that fearlessness and courage to go into the dark. Yang they look at the light. There's a quality of time to it. Whereas yin has to do with space. It's a very ephemeral quality. Yang has more of that solid time. What's going to happen? When's it going to happen? It's heat. It has a hot quality to it. So if you are feeling cold, you want to take things that have a yang quality to help balance it out. Energy of the body, again, because it's very active. And so whereas yin has to do with the more deficiency in chronic conditions, yang has to do with acute, boom, like that conditions. So you may hear of people having chronic inflammation. That's a more yin quality. Yang is, I have a cold or the 24-hour flu or something like that. It's just very time oriented. Again, the exterior of your body, more superficial imbalances and expansion. And Shen, we're going to talk about here in just a little bit more, but it's your spirit, it's your consciousness, your mental health, and it lives in your heart, specifically the blood vessels. So we have Qi, Chen, and Jing, and they are known as the three treasures. And so this chart is really a nice, I happened to just find this about a week or so ago. And I'm going to just go off a little bit of my notes here. There are substances or energies that we cultivate, especially if you do something like Qigong or yoga or Tai Chi or something. And it's an inner alchemy practice. There's not really an English translation for Jing, Qi, and Chen. And so, but they are often translated as essence, vitality, and spirit. That's the closest we can get. I'm so glad I have my water here. If you practice Qigong, and I've really, over the last month or so, really gotten into it, you learn to transform your Jing, your spirit, into Qi, your essence. And this is called the path of generation or the path of manifestation. And again, altogether, they're the three treasures. They can be thought of also as three different frequencies or as existing along a continuum of frequency. If you are a practitioner of this inner alchemy, you learn to modulate your consciousness along this vibratory spectrum. And so you choose your frequency in much the same way that you might choose like a radio station to tune into. Maybe again, my age is showing, you do this, tick the rabbit ears, things like that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Jing, which is this creative energy. Well, actually, I think I'm going to do the other ones first because I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about Jing. So Qi is your life force energy. It's that Qi which animates our body, which allows movement, all sorts of movement. It's the movement of your breath in and out of your lungs. It's the movement of your blood through the vessels. It's the functioning of your various organ systems. The home of Qi is what they call your middle dantian. So it's like by your belly button. And it's associated with the liver and spleen organ systems. So if you could say if Jin is the wax and wick of the candle, then Qi is the candle flame. It's the energy produced via the transformation of this physical base of the wax and wick. So again, you have that alchemy happening. So, you know, I know we're not all real techos here, but if Jing is your computer's hardware and software, then Qi is the electricity that allows the system to turn on to actually function as a computer. Shen is, so Qi is actually the second of the three treasures. Chen is the third, and that's our spirit or mind in its largest sense. The home of Shen is the upper dantian, and it's associated with the heart organ system. Shen is the spiritual radiance that can, it's, you know, when we look in somebody's eyes, that's that radiance that comes forth is Shen. I guess you could say it's the eminence of this universal loving kindness and compassion and an enlightened power. It's kind of your heart brimming with wisdom. I would also say forgiveness, generosity, compassion would be a part of that. And so again, if Jing is the wax and wick of a candle and Qi is its flame, then Shen is that radiance that's given off by the flame, which actually allows it to be a source of light. So in the same way that the light from a candle depends upon the wax, wick, and flame, so does healthy Shen depend upon the cultivation of Jing and Qi. It's only through the temple of a strong and balanced body that a radiant spirit can shine. And so I also put on here the healing practices of traditional Chinese medicine, such as acupuncture, Tui Na, and herbology are involved in this. So Jing, again, is the creative energy. It's the most concentrated or densely vibrating energy that we have. Of the three treasures, Jing is the one associated most closely with our physical body. The home of Jing is the lower dantian, or the kidney organ system, and it includes the reproductive energy of the sperm and ova. And you're going to hear me talk a lot about sex today. Jing is considered to be the root of our creative vitality. It's the physical substance out of which our life unfolds. I don't know if you've ever heard of Ron Teagarden. He's an herbalist. He has spring dragon tea. I was actually first introduced to him through Dr. Rita Marie. And he tells the story about how his master teacher likened Jing to the wax and wick of a candle. And so it can also be thought of as being similar, again, to the hardware and software of a computer, the physical basis for a functioning system. Jing is lost through excessive stress or worry. It is also depleted, especially in men, via excessive sexual activity, which includes ejaculation, and in women via abnormally heavy menstruation. Jing can be restored through dietary and herbal supplements, as well as through practices like Qigong. Before I go on, I want to make sure, are there any questions? I'm going to take that as a no. All right. Always feel free to just pipe up and speak. All right. So again, Jing has to do with the kidney and adrenal glands. By improving the qi, yin, or yang of the kidneys, you also improve the Jing, which is that deeper essence. The kidneys store Jing, which determines your vitality. And also your resistance to disease and longevity. Hence, again, why I wanted to do this now, the last day of our anti-aging remedies month. Let's see here. And I mentioned this a little bit before. Jing is also concentrated in the brain, ova, semen, and your bone marrow. You are born with congenital Jing, which influences your individual constitution and development. I'm going to go talk a little bit more about the kidneys. Sorry, I have my notes here and they're just all over. So the water element organs are the kidney and the bladder, not your gallbladder, but your urinary bladder. In Chinese physiology, these organs govern water metabolism. You know, it used to be when I was growing up, I remember my grandmother saying she had to make water, and that meant she had to go to the bathroom. And so that has, again, it carries that understanding of the water element with our kidneys. And again, the kidneys are seen as the root and foundation of the body. Again, we talk a lot about the liver and its importance, which it is. The liver is the general. The kidneys with the adrenal glands are the mother. And we all know the importance of mothers. Mothers really govern everything. So again, they rule the lower part, including the sexual organs and the reproductive functions. They also provide energy and warmth. So again, especially with the adrenal glands, and we shiver, that's part of that activity of what the kidney and adrenal glands do. And so the reason why these kind of additional functions are part of the kidney function and the adrenal activity is because of this assignment that Chinese medicine has given to the kidneys. The adrenals contribute to the energy, warmth, sexuality, and other attributes of the body. And so there's this kidney adrenal connection because adrenals sit right on top of the kidneys. And so they have secretions that make kidney activities possible, especially having to do with cortisol. And cortisol has to do with our stress, with the flight or fight. And so think about the fact that when you are maybe anxious or stressed, you get a little warmer. So that again goes back to that. So again, the kidneys representing the roots of the body are the foundation of all yin and yang activity. So we just talked about yin and yang as well as the three treasures. So starting to see a little connection here. Thus, the kidney supports and affects the yin of the entire body, and the kidney yang acts as a foundation for all the yang activity of the body. So we don't give enough credence and understanding to the importance of our kidneys or our adrenal glands. And so it's important to keep them healthy. And during kidney season, doing what's necessary to keep them going is important. So traditional Chinese medicine describes the kidneys as the palace of fire and water. And so anytime you might see a Chinese medicine doctor and they give you some type of a diagnosis involving the kidneys, Consider both this active yet calm, because again, we're talking about that yin and yang, right? So you've got active from the yang, but calm maybe from the yin. You have courageous but gentle, again, that yin and yang. You can accomplish a great deal, but without stress. And you just have this balance of an assertive nature with nurture. And then all problems with the kidneys show up in one or more specific areas of the body, plus the emotions and the different development patterns. The emotion having to do with kidneys is fear, which makes sense with the adrenal glands on there. That's your fight or flight organ. So general signs of kidney imbalance. All your bone problems, especially of your knees, lower back, and teeth, actually have to do with a kidney imbalance. It's a kidney adrenal imbalance. So anytime I'm working with somebody and they have bone issues, we work on balancing their adrenal glands and their kidneys. Any hearing loss or ear infections or any diseases having to do with your kidneys, your ears, are actually related to the kidney adrenal glands. Head hair problems, okay, again, really important to understand as we go along in our years. Why being calm is so important. Because again, it has to do with this kidney adrenal imbalance. And that's your hair loss, split ends, or graying, premature or otherwise, really. Any urinary, sexual, and reproductive imbalances, again, have to do with your kidneys. Poor growth or development of either your mind or body, premature aging, and it's all related to excessive fear and insecurity because the water element emotion is fear. And let's see here. Yeah. So kind of like the kidneys, fear is deeply rooted, and we are often not consciously aware of even the major areas of fear and insecurity. And because all of us have had some connection in one way or another with Laura Fine and Kimberly Ward and understanding the emotions, this may make more sense to you. So a little healthy fear protects us. It keeps us from, jumping or leaping is okay and hoping the net is there, but it's really important to actually look around and say, okay, is this jump okay? So that little bit of healthy fear is important. When excessive, however, fear fosters insecurities and it actually injures your kidneys. So again, it's not one or the other. Your kidneys, if your kidneys are out of balance, it may create fear. It may exacerbate this fear emotion. But at the same time, if you have this fear emotion keep coming up, it's actually going to do damage to your kidneys. So weak kidneys generate fearful feelings, which in turn block loving experiences. There is something called the destruction cycle. You have this stressful, fear-ridden kidneys, which is your water element, and so when they're damaged, they are not going to remove as much of the water, so to speak, your urine from the bladder. And when that happens, you have excess water. And what does that do? It extinguishes your heart spirit, which is your fire element. And our natural, normal expression of the heart is love and joy. But so now you have this dampening of it. And so many people who might seek out some type of therapy or other to try to understand, maybe dismantle these deep insecurities, while they're working on the emotional body, they need to also work on the physical body. So restoring your kidneys to a good balance is where we start with that. All right, so here we go. Jing, the source of kidney vitality. So like I was saying before, kidneys store Jing. They determine your vitality, resistance to disease, and longevity. It's concentrated in your brain, your ova, your semen, and bone marrow. And again, like I said before, you have congenital Jing. This is what you are born with. And that influences your individual constitution. The amount of congenital Jing you receive corresponds to the health and constitution of your parents. Jing is irreplaceable, and it's meant to serve you through your life. Once it's used up, your life ceases to be. You can acquire Jing through your food and some of the activities you do, but what you're doing is really just boosting the congenital Jing that you already have. You're not going to make more Jing. You're just magnifying what you already have. And Jing is more fundamental than qi, your blood, or other substances in the body. A deficiency of Jing does not have any obvious hot or cold signs. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment there. And I'm just going to check over. Did I lose everybody?
No, you haven't. I'm just,
Okay.
I had to move my area. So I'm balancing, acting, writing,
Not
taking
problem. It
notes.
was like, all of a sudden I don't see anybody there. I'm actually going to stop the Facebook Live. If anybody wants to join us on, you have the link to come on.
Okay.
Right. There we go. So any questions so far?
Actually, this is fascinating.
Okay.
It really is.
I'm so glad here. All right, so I'm going to go back and share my screen. All right, so now we will. All right, we're going to talk about having a Jing deficiency. If you are deficient in Jing, it's going to impair your growth and development. It can cause birth defects in any children you might have. It can slow or retard, and I don't mean it in the bad way, but just that it can slow that physical and mental growth. And so you may not actually complete your maturation process if you have a Jing deficiency. You may have inadequate brain function, weak legs and bones, be impotent, and other reproductive functions. You may have early senility. One cannot have too much Jing. Other symptoms of Jing deficiency I have here include dizziness, loose teeth, loss of head hair, ringing in the ears, and weak pain in the lower back. So more important than adding Jing building remedies is the preservation of the congenital Jing you have and the health of your kidneys by avoiding harmful habits. So is this striking anybody? I heard somebody go, oh. So
yeah, I find it interesting on the bone problems, the lower back and teeth, because that was about, well, it was actually about this time last year is when I started having problems with that. So that's really interesting.
Yep. And I'm right there with you, which is one of the reasons I started studying this, because I want to live a long time. So factors which deplete Jing: stress, fear, insecurity, and overwork. You know, we're just told about this in so many facets. It's why aren't we getting it? Why aren't we embracing the idea of this? And so this is just more maybe inspiration and motivation to look at the stress in your life, your fear, how you may be overworking yourself. So your reproductive factors, again, too much semen loss in men greatly reduces Jing, particularly when it occurs in old age. And this next one, of course, it struck me, women bearing too many children, especially without rebuilding soon after each birth. And that part there, I like, well, I think I did, even though I didn't realize it, I think I did a decent job of that. And too many means more than their particular constitution can healthfully support. And so I think that's an important piece to that as well. Toxins in our food and water. Again, this is why it's really important to look at the quality of our food and water. It's not just nice, it might be necessary. Intoxicants such as alcohol, marijuana, cocaine, coffee, and tobacco. Heavy metals such as mercury and lead, and then aluminum. I don't think they make them as often, but your cookware, excessive sweet flavored food, and too many dietary proteins. Again, this has to do with your individual body. It's also how is your body breaking down the proteins. And notice I say sweet flavored food. Most food has some sweetness to it, but it's that flavor which actually can trigger things in your brain. So watch how you react. If you eat something that's sweet and you crave it, then you're being affected by it. All right, so how do we know what depletes it. Now, how can we nourish and nurture it? Everybody needs more vitality. Even if you're feeling great and whatever, there really is no limit on how much vitality you can have. And so everyone needs to nourish their Jing. Without adequate Jing, which again is your foundation essence, nothing else functions properly in the body. Since all wholesome foods, and wholesome foods may be different for me than for you. And that's part of finding out what is wholesome for me. They contribute to your acquired Jing. So then again, the important question is which food works best to replenish this Jing once it's depleted. So before even the best Jing tonics, not gin and tonics, Jing tonics can act, they have to be digested, assimilated, and metabolized properly. So you need to first assess the health of your spleen pancreas in terms of its digestive strength. And I know Beatrice went through Dr. Rita Marie's Before Begun, also now known as the Sweet Spot program, and that has a lot to do with your pancreas and your blood sugar. So she's been working on this. And so your spleen pancreas has to do with your chi and your digestive fire. The liver assists in digestion, and because of its degenerate condition, I don't mean it as a bad way, but that's what it does. It helps degenerate food and nutrients. It usually needs renewal before Jing can be efficiently bolstered. So that's why they work. You've got your little general here and you've got your kidney adrenals here, and you need them to both be working at their optimum level. You need your liver because you're going to take all these Jing tonics, and if your liver isn't able to break it down and deliver it where it needs to be, you're not going to nourish your Jing. So you can be taking the most amazing Jing herbs and things, and it's just expensive pee or poop. I don't know how else to put it. So a basic relationship between the liver and kidneys is elucidated by the Chinese teaching that the liver and kidneys are from the same source, which is why a number of kidney tonics also tonify the liver. No one can say that any one food has all the nutrients that are needed for optimum Jing renewal, because you need a broad range of nutrients. There are certain specific foods that Chinese tradition says rapidly builds Jing when you are severely deficient. We're going to go over that. But there are so many other foods that have Jing enhancing properties, but they work more gradually. I just want to make sure I'm not going over that yet. So some people, depending on their constitution and condition, need specific foods to build their Jing, while other foods may actually be inappropriate. So for those of us here, now Emily is a little bit younger, that's okay. This is why she needs to be here. There are people, like I just had my 62nd birthday. Beatrice's license shows she's a little bit older, but she's still really vital. She's she's just full of vitality. So you can still be older and have this vitality. You may have some signs that would be what I call excessive. On the excessive side of the scale, you may have a strong voice, you may have a forceful pulse, a bright reddish complexion, an outgoing personality, and just generally robust. And this is not a bad thing, unless it's excessive. And so you can have this quality and still have an imbalance, which shows up with you losing your head hair. Maybe your teeth are loose, or you're even losing them. You might have backache, your libido may be lower. And so you have this sign here of a Jing deficiency. So again, you show this excess on one side, but a deficiency on another. So we're trying to figure out what is going to bring the two things into imbalance. And so if somebody has this kind of excessive personality, it's usually because they've been eating a lot of rich foods, and certain foods, like with certain meats, can in small amounts can actually strengthen your Jing. But if you eat too much of it, it's and then you add in their stimulants like coffee and sugar, it can actually start depleting your Jing, and it really affects your liver. And again, going back to not being able to digest, assimilate, and metabolize all your wonderful Jing essence and herbs. So let's see, just looking at my notes here, because I want to make sure I get this these principles to you. And so the other thing that can happen is that when you're doing this, it's hard on your kidneys. You may have heard of gout, and so that again has to do with the amount of protein that not only that you're eating, but you're actually digesting and metabolizing. So I'm not here to say nobody should be eating meat. Small amounts, and again, the amount, it may be dependent on you. Everybody's going to be a little different. But making sure that your body breaks protein down. I know personally, I have a hard time. My body right now has a hard time breaking down and assimilating protein. So that's something that I'm working on. It's affecting my liver in terms of producing too much sulfur, ammonia, and methane. And so I'm aware of it and working to balance it out. All right, so now we're gonna go to the next one.
Lynn, real quick, how do you know that it's affecting you that way? Are you just in tune with yourself, or?
Well, there's part of it, but I do like stool testing
Okay.
and find out what's going on, what bacteria and viruses and all sorts of different organisms are in my body, my microbiome. And again, they're neither bad nor good, they just are. And
Right.
so like we are nourishing our Jing here, we nourish our microbiome, which again helps feed everything in our body.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a terrain person. I go by the terrain theory, not the germ theory. Partly because I find that the germ theory has to do with killing. It's like, oh, you've got a germ, let's kill it. And my thought is, oh, there are these things within us. Some of them are better for me than others. So I'm going to provide an environment, a terrain, so that they can live in harmony and balance. Yeah, so that's kind of how that goes. So building Jing requires foods that promote the growth and development of your body and mind, because we've talked about how if you don't have enough of it, your growth can be stunted or impaired, and as well as your brain. And such foods should also provide renewal, longevity, reproductive capacity, and protection from aging. We all age, but it's doing it gracefully and well and giving us longevity that we kind of seek. And so we're going to go over some foods. We're going to get in the practical end of things. So microalgae, your chlorella, spirulina, wild blue green, fish. And I didn't put all of them on here because there's only so much space, but also liver, kidney, brain, bone and its marrow. So like if you have a bone broth, actually human placenta and cereal grasses are good. I actually gave this talk a couple of years ago in one of Dr. Rita Marie's groups, and Kimberly was hosting it because she did some work with Dr. Rita Marie then. And she's a midwife, and she would talk about the importance that some people did eat the placenta after a birth, and because it has so many nutrients that are in there. And what it is they are rich in these nucleic acids of RNA and DNA, and this protects your body from degeneration. Nucleic acids contain the blueprint for cellular renewal, and they've been shown to initiate aging reversal. Now, again, this is just what I'm not, no promises here. This is just what I've read and learned about. And so the animal products among these foods are also rich in vitamin B12. Your body makes its own vitamin B12. If you are deficient, you can again take certain probiotics and prebiotics to help your body build it. But if you're deficient meantime, taking a B12 can be extremely important. And B12 has been shown to influence the production of nucleic acids as well as initiate growth and development. And this is really important for children as well. Vitamin A, again, it just has such a rich supply in both the animal and vegetable foods. And it's the ones that I've just been talking about. And vitamin A actually strengthens sexual development and reproduction. I know we often think of it in terms of maybe our immune system, our eyes, things like that, but it actually also has a lot to do with your reproductive system. And it can protect against congenital birth defects because these are all in the domain of Jing activity. And so the foods that supply the omega-3 fatty acids. So that will be your chia seed, flaxseed, hemp seeds, walnuts, things like that, as well as some people do well with cod liver oil or krill or things like that. These are found, the omega-3 fatty acids are found in concentration in the body where there is Jing storage. So again, that's your sperm, brain, liver, kidneys, bone marrow, and placenta. Omega-3s develop and maintain the nervous system. They clean your arteries and they provide cellular integrity. You know, there's, along with the animal foods, microalgae are actually a very excellent source of B12. If you are not sure what your B12 levels are, there's a company called Norman Labs. In fact, their website is b12.com that I consider the best test for it. It tests what's called your MMA or methylmalonic acid. And that's really what your B12 status is. You can get a B12 test done in your blood labs, but my training has said it's not really the most accurate gauge of your B12 status. But again, going back to the microalgae, you can take it and it's going to really help, but it's not a true form of B12. It's kind of what's called an analog. And so if you're going to take microalgae to help with your B12, take a B12 supplement as well. And this is really true, especially for those who might be older and are deficient in B12. Cereal grasses contain valuable amounts of nucleic acids, but they have nowhere near the amount that the microalgae does. It contains something called P4D1 fraction, and it's thought to repair damaged nucleic acid in the body. It's also a really good source of omega-3 oils, and the cereal grasses are also a good source of provitamin A. And so one of the best nutritional reasons for using barley or wheatgrass for Jing stimulation is this grass juice factor. It has a real growth promoting. I mean, think about it. You've got barley grass, so you want to get it within 10 days of it actually starting to grow. And so it's in that life-giving part of its life. And so it is going to help promote your body with growth, and it has a reproduction enhancing effect. And then chlorella growth factor in chlorella is a similar phenomenon that promotes the vitality of this concept of Jing. And so these animal products I talked about, the fish, liver, kidney, brain, bone in its marrow, the placenta, are considered strong tonics for growth and development, really in both the East and the West. In China, human placenta is thought to be one of the best general tonics for wasting and debility. In fact, Chinese pharmacies carry it in a dried powder form. And you know, if you're ever interested, I have a soup recipe with fresh placenta. And the other piece to that too is it can actually be helpful to your reproductive system if you have had recurrent miscarriages, or you might be challenged by sterility or impotence. And also if you do not have sufficient breast milk, you know, if your lactation isn't producing enough breast milk. So placenta can be helpful with that. And then placenta is a universal folk remedy for restoring vitality after childbirth, because that's when your Jing deficiency is most common in women of childbearing age. And it's said to be the only meat that comes from life rather than death, which I thought was pretty interesting. When using kidney, liver, and other animal parts, it's important that they be from animals raised organically. And also, if you are so lucky to have a biodynamic farm near you, that actually, I feel, surpasses organic. But this is really important if you're going to be making what's called bone marrow soup. So that could be beef or chicken broth, because you're getting that marrow. And the marrow absorbs the most of the toxins, the heavy metals, things like that. So if you're using a conventionally raised chicken or beef bone, you're going to be absorbing all the heavy metals and toxins that were in that animal. So like for myself, because chicken broth is actually a superfood for me, so I order from Butcher Box, and they're all guaranteed to be organically raised. If you happen to know an organic farmer and you can get that, I would highly recommend that. Chinese medicine considers the blood and Jing to be closely related. And some Jing tonics are also blood tonics. In other words, they're good for your blood. And that would include the B12, your microalgae, your cereal grasses. Excuse me. What else? The liver, the kidneys, the placenta, all of those are good for your blood. So if you tend to be anemic or have other blood issues, those are things you want to make sure are in your food planning. I am so sorry. So to also show you this kind of connection between the blood and Jing, Chinese medicine says that the health of the hair is a reflection of the quality of your blood. And then that also has to do with the quality of your kidneys, what's going on there. So these are all just things to look for as you balance your body. It's not something to stress out over. It's just an awareness. So then you can make choices. All right, so here we go to some nutritive tonic foods. Some of them are actually herbs as well. So Solomon seal, almonds, milk can also, if you can tolerate milk, clarified butter, which is also ghee, are nutritive tonic foods because it builds the bones. And anything that builds the bones is going to be good for your Jing. And so we have Solomon seal. It's used extensively in the East. We don't hear much about it over here, although it's around here. You may look at this picture. This is a picture of Solomon seal and may go, oh yeah, I've seen that. But in Chinese medicine, it plays a real prominent role. There is the mountain dwelling Taoists. They use a lot of Solomon seal, and we talk about how these folks are just, they lived long lives. But Solomon seal has also been used by them to help develop levitation. So if that's something that you aspire to, you might want to find yourself some Solomon seal. Because if you think about it, that act of levitation requires a lot of vitality. And again, that's measured by that Chinese term of Jing. And how it's converted from these substances into Jing, which is again why metabolism is so important. Almonds, milk, and clarified butter support something called ojas, which is an Ayurvedic description that's similar to Jing. milk from any animal represents a close and subtle transformation of its blood. Babies typically get all of their Jing nourishment from mother's milk, especially during the first few months of life. All dairy, if it is of the highest quality and tolerated, if you can tolerate it, will supplement the Jing. Clarified butter, you can use ghee as a cooking oil, although I usually recommend it after you maybe steam or cook it and just have it on to melt it. But it will improve the assimilation of the nutrients of the food that you're eating. So if again you can tolerate ghee, I encourage you to get some and start experimenting with that, because again, assimilating your nutrients is really important to nourishing your Jing. Nettles. And we're in spring season, which is nettle season. Nettles are a kidney tonic in the West, in this part of the world, and they also thicken the head hair and enrich your blood. And so again, that shows their value in supplementing Jing, because it's reflected in your blood as well as your head hair. There was an ancient sage in Tibet that fasted on nettles until his skin turned a light green hue. He eventually developed legendary psychic and physical powers. And nettles, and so again, you can see it also has an effect on the brain. And all over Europe, people use nettles to improve their vitality. I think it's only here, and just recently over the last few years, it's really, people have started actually using it. Before that, it was just something they killed. They didn't understand. And so they can be eaten as a cooked green, because lightly steaming will take off the stingers, or nullify them, I guess you could say. You can make a tea out of them, a tincture. Just any way you can find this herb, I highly encourage you to do that. Okay, royal jelly and bee pollen. These are thought to contain the most complete range of nutrients of any foods. Now, I will state before I go on here, it takes a lot of work by these little bees here to make royal jelly and bee pollen. And so it's not something to just be taken because you think you need more nutrients. You really need to be mindful and thankful to them as you take them. Royal jelly is more concentrated in nutrients than bee pollen. So both royal jelly and bee pollen are energy tonics. So if you really are feeling depleted in your energy, like seriously depleted, then taking royal jelly might be something you want to consider. Royal jelly promotes phenomenal physical growth, reproductive ability, and longevity. I mean, look at the queen bee. This is what the queen bee eats. And so you'll see a lot of bodybuilders who take royal jelly, and kind of doesn't make me happy because I don't think they understand what they're doing. But again, if your libido is suffering, then and then your reproductive organs are suffering, this is something to consider. Let's see. Okay, the next one. So this is if you're seriously depleted in Jing. We have dodder seeds, prepared Romania root, deer antler, tortoise shell, chicken, and mussel. So doddered, did I miss? No, I think I got them all. Dodder seeds and deer antler they're really potent Chinese Jing tonics. Again, if you have a serious depletion. And again, if you going back to those slides, what's your hair like? What are your teeth like? What are your bones like? So this isn't what you would use to increase if you've already got a good supply. This is if you're seriously depleted. Prepared Romania root is a more gradually acting remedy, as are chicken and mussel. And you can find Mountain Rose Herbs is a good source for prepared Romania root, and you can use that to make like teas and so forth. And again, let's see here. Okay, so you want to again use other foods that help build your kidneys. And so in the 5 elements, we talk about beans, and especially dark foods that have a salty flavor. So like if you make your black beans and you cook them with some seaweed and maybe a pinch of salt, that would be that's a good kidney energy food. And you support your kidneys, you're going to be supporting your Jing because that's where it's stored. So Chinese herbology recommends the following as generally beneficial for the kidneys. So you've got millet. I didn't put it on here because some people are they're sensitive to it, but wheat, black sesame seeds, black soybeans, chestnuts, mulberries, raspberries, strawberries, and walnuts. Also interesting is that black or dark colored clothing. So it's just, again, that dark color. It nourishes the kidneys and will help you conserve your Jing. So, like right now I've got some really dark gray pants on. That's going to be helpful to that essence of my Jing. Let's see here. There we go. So ideal Jing nourishment must also include spiritual practices, because this again can help mobilize Jing. It can infuse your Jing with energy, with that spirit it needs, and then that will transform it into Qi and Chen, like we talked about with the 3 treasures. One of the things to consider, and I feel is really missing from today, is this understanding of sexuality and sexual activity. We spend Jing with our sexual activity, specifically or mostly in males as they have their emissions. And so that's why you'll often see this emphasis on celibacy by certain groups of spiritual seekers. And part of that is to preserve Jing both in male and female. So that could be why, in the Catholic Church, it was celibacy that was taught, but I'm certain that they taught them nothing about Jing in the church. But you'll see a lot of other churches talk about celibacy. And so if you have ample Jing, though, it can actually be agitated if you have a sexual desire, unless it's transformed into a spiritual essence. So you'll hear about like tantric sex, things like that. It's the understanding of the spirit behind the desire and the movement of the energy. You'll see celibate monks and yogis, again, the nuns, they can accomplish this transformation of the energy by things like selfless service, their devotional practices, their spiritual disciplines. the most highly evolved spiritual masters of China and India were said to generate something called sharira. It's crystalline gems in their bodies. And these were thought to be condensation of their Jing. So according to one theory, sharira indicates the degree of spiritual concentration. It may be a highly unified substance that when integrated into the living body brings profound clairvoyance and attunement to spiritual guidance. And it's said that only like the most evolved of the masters have these sharira. And when they've been cremated, it's said that it sparkled because of this sharira. Let's see, Buddha was reportedly to have found to have 10,000 sharira. Because sharira seems to have miraculous properties, a certain reverence is customarily paid to them, much the same as the bones of the saints in the West are treasured relics. And again, bones harbor the marrow, and so that's one of the storage places for their Jing. So, how do you choose, kind of goes back to Emily's question, how do you choose the appropriate Jing tonic? So if you have heat signs, so like you don't like it where it's hot because you already are hot, you are thirsty all the time, your tongue is red, you may have a yellow tongue coating, your face is flushed because of the heat, your eyes will be bloodshot, the palms of your hands and the soles of your feet are hot. You may have afternoon fevers, they're called tidal fevers, night sweats, and fresh red cheeks. So you want to avoid anything that's warming. So you want to avoid things like your deer antler, chicken, liver, kidneys from beef or lamb, walnuts, mussels, trout, salmon, and other warming fish. So the most appropriate Jing tonics for persons with these signs of deficient yin are, because that's what a heat sign is a sign of a deficient yin, is your prepared Romania root, Solomon seal, chlorella, spirulina, black beans with seaweeds, wheatgrass, and wild blue-green microalgae. These are going to cool you down. You can make elixirs with them. You can make teas with them. You can put them in smoothies or juices. There's many different ways you can prepare them. And the wheatgrass and wild blue-green are really, really helpful for the heat signs. If you have signs of excess, there you go. You will, and you'll see similarities between some of this. So you might have a sign of excess and a sign of heat, but you're going to be robust, again, having that reddish complexion. Your radial pulse is going to be really strong. Your voice is going to be really strong. Again, you'll have a thick tongue coating. And so then again, you want something more cooling. Wheat or barley grass products, your microalgae, spirulina, chlorella, wild blue-green, nettles, seaweed, pollen, that's your bee pollen, and almonds, salmon seal, and fish. Let's see, bone marrow soup could be really good. So like chicken broth. Let's see, dotard seeds, deer antler, and placenta are too tonifying to be recommended in cases of excess. Let's see. All right, tonics for signs of deficiency. So if you are frail, pale, maybe a sallow complexion, your pulse is weak, you're a little more introverted, you have little or no tongue coating, you would benefit from dotted seeds, especially if you have loose stools, if you have threatened cases of miscarriage. Then also the prepared Romania root, royal jelly, bee pollen, milk, clarified butter or ghee, the placenta, especially if you are wasting away and have some emaciation, and then deer antler. The cereal grasses and the wild blue green microalgae are best avoided because they're too cooling. They're not good for you if you have these other signs. And that brings us into those with cold signs. So if you have frequent feelings of coldness and aversion to cold, so this is me, a pale complexion, attraction to warm food and drinks. I love warm food and drinks. You would benefit from dodder seeds, ghee, deer antler, warming seafoods, especially mussels, salmon, anchovy, trout, and chicken. Let's see, did I have, yeah, I said ghee, deer antler. Yep, I said that. Placenta, chicken, liver. Yeah, liver is good, particularly chicken or lamb liver. Kidney, especially from the lamb, is good if you have these cold signs. Again, you want to avoid cereal grass products, wild blue green. Seaweeds can actually be too cooling, as well as nettles and salmon seal. If a child has a severe Jing deficiency, such as they have a stunted growth, I mean, some people are just short. My youngest daughter is just always as short. But if it appears like they have stunted growth, slower learning, learning disability, they have sluggish bowel movements, maybe skeletal weakness or some deformities there, and then the skull bones, the fontanelle skull bones don't close. Deer antler is a specific remedy for that one. Tortoiseshell is preferred in cases of failure of the fontanelle to close. It also treats stunted skeletal development. If any type of meat is eaten as a Jing tonic, you should just be careful with how you prepare it. Don't use a lot of it. Again, watching the quality of it. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, I am almost done. So the aging process. Aging in America is thought to be just this process of degeneration. We usually think of aging in terms of our physical decline. And although there are so many people I know of that, I mean, look at Beatrice. I know many people into their 90s that just seem to be full of physical and mental health in their later years. And so again, the main reason maybe your original constitution. So there are certain things though that contribute to vitality. When people age gracefully, physical decline is more than compensated by the development of wisdom. And this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before with deepening your spiritual awareness. I mean, look at some of these martial artists. They can easily fend off younger, probably more muscular opponents. We see that their skills are not due to great strength or speed, but they have this ability to see more clearly. You can see a situation, just even know what's going to happen before it happens. So perhaps the most important factor for increasing vitality in old age are these practices which deepen spiritual awareness, along with an attitude that applies them consistently in daily life. Good nutrition is always something to consider, since assimilation of nutrients decreases with age. our hormones go down, our stomach acid goes down. So making sure that what you do take in is really important. Because this is all really, again, important for the development of Jing, of that kidney essence. And because when you don't have it, you're aging. You'll see people, it's like, whoa, what happened to them? It may have been a combination of their diet, maybe they exercise too much, stress. It's reducing their Jing. Ayurveda describes aging as a process of increased vata, which is a tendency to become drier, thinner, more nervous, and restless, with less appetite, more fear, and later sleep. So because of dryness, the likelihood of constipation increases. And if you are constipated, you are not moving things through as quickly. That's why one of the first questions I ask my clients is, what are your bowel movements like? Do you have them regularly? And so this is one of the things that translates in Chinese medicine to aging. It's that deficient yin. Let's see, going through my notes. And of course, it differs according to individuals. Ideally, a person will experience the signs of aging mildly. So here are some things to consider as you go along the aging timeline. Avoid overeating. Overeating is the major cause of aging, especially in wealthy countries. Never eat to the point of being full. And this is not only just the first thing I'm sharing with you, it's also the most important thing. Be mindful of how much you're eating. Be mindful of the feeling of fullness in your body, which is why it's important to eat slowly, because it takes about 20 minutes for your brain to know that you actually been eating. Do not eat late at night. Eat the last meal of the day as early as possible, and it should be small and just nourishing. Avoid sudden extreme diet changes. So, maybe you've been on a low carb diet and you're hearing all these people talking about keto. So you suddenly start eating all this fat and protein. Your body's going to go, what in the world are you doing to us? And so that will affect your bowel movements. You'll gain weight, which is not what you want to do. So that's just something to consider. Food should be easily digestible. Cereal creams, purees may be necessary if you can't chew well. So like smoothies are good, soups, things like that. Let's see here. Oh, I guess I must have been my last slide. All right. So avoid weakening foods and restrict cooling foods. So weakening foods are no surprise here. Refined sugar and its products, intoxicants such as coffee and alcohol, too much salt, highly processed foods. Again, example of cooling foods are your raw vegetables, fruits, juices, and I'm not against raw foods. It's what's best for you. Raw foods and fruit can be used to a greater extent if you have heat or excess signs. Let's see. A high protein diet of heavy meats weakens the bones of the older person and severely taxes the organs of digestion, respiration, and circulation. A younger person digests meat more easily because they have a greater spleen pancreas energy. So those who need to eat more meat are generally those who have some like a yin or yang or an organ deficiency. But you should have it in small amounts, especially things like your organ meats, your bone broth, things like that. Organic minerals are the most fundamental nutrients. Marine animals whose diets are highest in a broad range of minerals found in seaweeds and other algae do not show signs of cellular aging and usually die from accidents. The cellular structure of adult whales is virtually identical to that of newborn whales. By comparison, adult humans generally have massive cellular deterioration compared to infants. So again, some of the richest and most complete sources of organic minerals are from seaweeds, such as kelp, kombu, and wakame. Your wild blue-green microalgae and barley or wheatgrass products. Again, if you have cold signs or thin or frail, you want to avoid wild blue-green microalgae and use cereal grasses cautiously. But again, refined sugar is more than any other food is what devastates the mineral condition of the body. Let's see. You know, there's also been kind of a push to be low carb, grain free. Some people that's probably best for them, but whole grains, vegetables, legumes, nuts, seaweeds, your regional fruits, all these fiber rich carbohydrates, they clean your heart and arteries, and they keep your digestive tract just moving smoothly. What can I say? If you do use animal products, the complex carbohydrates make a good balance for that. Sprouts of grains, legumes, and seeds are an ideal way for older people to take these foods because sprouting breaks down fats, proteins, and starches into easily digestible forms. Your RNA and DNA, that nucleic acid I was talking about before, can increase many times over in the sprouting process. Sprouts should be I eat them in my salads, but I also lightly steam them, except if you have heat signs. So that's why I steam them. Eating immature foods, including sprouts, cereal grass shoots, and young vegetables like baby carrots, they have this ancient tradition in the Eastern countries that immature foods keep a person young. All right, I think that's about, I've got other notes, but I feel like I'm going along. Senility and other difficult aging problems can sometimes be helped by the gin tonics such as deer antler, dodder seeds, processed Romania, longevity soup, bustle, and chicken. You know, the thing is these foods are not a cure. They're just a really good basis of nutritional supplementation while you work on the whole body. You know, if you think about the ginkgo biloba tree leaf, it's been shown in clinical studies to increase blood flow and neural transmission to the brain. So if you take this extract of the leaf of the ginkgo, and the ginkgo is probably oldest living tree species in the world, it's been shown to reduce symptoms such as memory loss, vertigo, ringing in the ears, even depression. You know, so these are things to consider. They can be helpful, but it's a part of the whole plan. You know, I talked before about the microalgae, like wild blue-green microalgae and chlorella. They've been helpful in certain cases of senility, but again, it's in process with everything. And it's finding out what's going on there. Oh, somebody sent me a message here. Oh, thank you for being here, Emily.
Thank you so much. Nice to see you, ladies.
Yeah.
Bye, Emily.
And actually I was done. So you had good timing there.
Good.
Finally.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. So I know I've went over a lot. I'm kind of one of those people. It's like, oh, I should say this. Oh, I should share this. So I have like pages and pages of notes, but I realized I was like, oh, look what time it is. But I want to make sure if there was anything that you wanted to know or more about, or that you know of and I missed.
No, I thought it was really good. So when you talk about eating liver, it's chicken and lamb?
Chicken and lamb, right.
Okay.
Especially if you have heat signs.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, you want to make sure it's organic or biodynamically raised.
Oh yeah, that was another thing too. What is Butcher Box?
Butcher Box is where I get my meat from.
So I can order that?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's all organically grown.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Lynn?
Yes.
I've been going to the acupuncturist on and off. Well, I haven't been in years, but let's say a good 30 years, okay? I finally understood what he was talking about. Finally. Because he used to talk about the heat and the cold and the lake and the water. And I had no idea what they were talking about. And both in El Paso and here in Gainesville. And you said something at a certain moment, and I don't remember what it is, when suddenly everything I've heard about Chinese medicine clicked into place.
Wonderful.
I could understand, I really could understand what they were talking about. It's a shame that it happened, 20 years later. Not it won't help me then, but it certainly will help me now. Now, I do have a question for you on the nettles.
Yes.
Because I have the dried nettles that I've powdered to make tea with. Is there too much to take, or
not? So again, gauge your body. If you find that your body temperature is changing, if your skin turns green,
then I won't. I'm always cold, so but
well, then you want to be careful because nettle is cooling.
Is cooling.
Yeah. So pay attention to how you're feeling. I'm just looking at my notes.
I mix it with green tea and moringa tea.
Okay. Yeah. And you're heating it up, so that can be helpful too. That's why I
or weird.
will steam mine.
Okay.
My nettles. Yeah.
All right. And right now I'm just waiting to see what came out of the test that I had done today.
Okay.
Which is not going to be very good, but I'll talk about it with you.
Okay.
For about 2 years, I've been saying I have to go back to the Before Be Gone program. And so tomorrow I'm going, I've already got everything that I need.
Yeah.
And do it again because my instinct has been saying that that's what I need more than anything.
I know, you've been saying that.
I've been saying that and I don't do it, and I've been saying that because it's so comfortable to cook everything, the meal for everyone, and then I eat that, and then it's not good for me, but it sure is tasty, let me tell you. And it's much easier than cooking something or fixing something different for me. But it's gotten to the point where I realize that I have to do it.
Right. So you know the principles of Before Be Gone. And so you don't have to follow, because if you're cold and she does more raw foods, then that may not be what's best for you.
But you see, one of the reasons why I didn't do it before, because it's been really cold here, but now it's warm.
Okay.
Now we're up to the 80s. And we're not going back from 70 back to 40s like we were a few weeks ago. So that way I can take it. Raw foods seem to be really good. And I say that program because it was really good for me.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I've heard you say that many times.
In fact, today when they were doing the ultrasound on the thyroid, the technician kept saying, "Well, why aren't you taking thyroid medicine?" And I kept saying, because they told me I didn't need it. And she kept saying, "But that doesn't go with what you've been telling me, that you've had thyroid problems since you were 12 or 13." And I said, well, the doctors here told me that I didn't need it anymore. I'm at the point where I think I do need it again. So, so
Well, we
let's
can talk about that. We can talk
we'll
about that.
talk about that because this is my plan. I went to the doctor because I need surgery, and I said this body needs to be fixed up for surgery. So he said we'll start with a lung X-ray. And he came back and he said the lungs were fine, but the thyroid is enlarged and it's moved over, so maybe that's the cause of your coughing. So I want to know what he'll say. I always argue with him about what I have to do, and then I do what I damn well please.
Yeah.
And then I see him 6 months later and he says, you're fine, you took my medicines, and I tell him no, and then he wants to know what I did and he writes it down. So once he tells me what he thinks is the situation, whether to go to an endocrinologist or not, and I think I might have to. Whatever it is, then is when I'm going to talk to you.
Okay.
And let's see if I'm right. But a friend of mine told me on the phone, she said, what you need to do is, that lady, that friend of yours who does herbs, she's the one you need, you know. She's really the one you need. Don't go to the doctor. And I said, well, I agree with you, but my family is pushing, and it doesn't hurt if I go and get an X-ray.
Oh, no.
And then I'm like you, I'd rather do it my way than
Well, you know, I
sometimes
don't.
I need the doctor, but I usually follow my instinct.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that's your body will tell you
Yeah.
what you need
Right.
on a alternative healthy route.
Yeah.
Than
That's
injecting something that's not natural to who we are and what our body's about. So I'm very much, you know,
That's right.
into going to my herbs and oils or whatever it is first, then
Yeah.
I'll get back at you later.
That's right. That's right.
Exactly.
No, it had gotten to the point where I said this, whatever I do or don't do, whatever I eat or don't eat with this cough, it's not helping me, and I do need that hernia surgery. And
What kind of hernia?
are we only by ourselves? Can you turn
Yeah.
off the recording and
Oh, sure. Sorry. Thank you.
because I don't mind females listening to it, but I would rather